gotta
All
eat
right.
it. You gotta hold it up to eat it.
Well, thank you everyone again for showing up to these things. These little get-togethers, they matter big time. She said, I'm Jared Bosley. I'm a fourth-generation farmer, currently raising the fifth. We got cow-calf operation and raised corn and soybeans, alfalfa, hay. I've been there. 1907 is when the ranch kind of started. I'm going to give you a story, well, kind of evolving one yet, of the things that I've been through, my kids, my wife have been through since this has started with this whole pipeline thing. So I was gone. It was the first part of May. I was up planting alfalfa for a neighbor. My wife happened to be home recovering from gallbladder surgery. And she sent me a text. She goes, is someone stopping by the house for something? And I didn't know nothing about it. She said, someone was in the house and yelled, hello, hello. I was like, oh, I don't know nothing. Usually the parts guys, they just drop parts at the shop. So she got out of the shower, went down, and turned our cameras for Kevin over to the shop and followed this pickup. And they went over to the shop, and they went into the shop, and then back out, and they sat in their pickup, and they kind of sat there and laughed a little bit the way it looked on the cameras. I had a couple signs like that hanging on the Quonset. We have been against this thing from the get-go. Nothing about this makes sense. Everything they do is a lie. So I've been very vocal at the county commission and across this, everything, trying to get people rallied up. This didn't just happen. We've been at 2 years of trying to get this stopped. But we are getting people to wake up now about this. Okay, I got off topic there a little bit. Back to story. So they go to the shop and then head back up to the field where this proposed pipeline is supposed to go. And she called. She goes, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, go up there and just see who it is. They're in an unmarked vehicle with Louisiana license plates on. Now, it doesn't just show up to the ranch very often. So she went up there, and when she got out of her vehicle, she called me. And I was on speakerphone. And when I picked up, I heard the guy say, Summit, here to survey. And all I said was, if it's Summit, they're there to survey, the sheriff should be involved. And I said, I'll deal with this later. I hung up then because I was coming to a water hole in a field I'd never been in. I kind of had to watch what I'm doing. A little bit later, she texted me, said they're gone. As far as I know, that's the end of it. Well, later that day, a detective came out to my house. I was still planting. I wasn't there, but he left his card with Tara. And I called him that next day, and he didn't answer. We played phone tag for 2 days. But that Friday, we finally get lined up to meet, and he comes to the shop out there. And he goes, so what do you want to talk about, Jared? I said, now, let's back this up. You came to see me the other day. What do you want to talk about? You know, the detective's looking for you. We call him. I'm not running from anything. I didn't do anything. I've been in the field all day. Well, after they left my farm, after I had that 6-second phone call, they went and filed a report that said I threatened to kill him and chased him off my land. So now they got this on me. Now I got to go to court. I don't know, that was 2 weeks after that. We go to court for this. And I got the lawyer. We have evidence. We got phone records. We got the videos. I got witnesses seen me planting up there. We got everything. We got an hour and a half of stuff to present to the judge to prove I'm innocent. We get to court. The judge calls me up there. They say a little bit, and he goes, well, I'm not going to find Mr. Bosley in contempt of court. But there's no reason to go through the evidence in this. We're not here to make this a circus. He goes, if he wants to clear his name up, he can do it on social media. And then he goes, I'm telling all of you right now in the courtroom, so we probably had 50 landowners there, and if anybody else interferes with them like this, then you are going to get charged with contempt. I never even did anything. I was 10 miles away in a field. I never spoke with them, never nothing. So then he told the lawyers they got to line up a time to survey. So I got a text the 2nd of June, and they asked, does the 20th, 21st work? I said, whatever, one of them will work fine, whatever. The 20th of June come, I never heard another word from anybody. There was nothing. I mean, if you say someone you're going to come to their place in 2 weeks, you kind of give them a heads up day before. Yep, that's still a plan or something. So I was calling Beans AGP. Like, Kid was going out to pick bales up and said, Dad, I don't know who's here, but there's a sheriff, there's a semi with a big yellow piece of machinery on, and there's 6, 7, 8 pickups. I said, Jack, just go pick your bales up. You don't have to worry about this. You don't need to talk to a damn person. You go out there and you pick your bales up. He did that. Well, my wife was working till noon that day. This is about 8:30 in the morning. She was home before I got home. The daughter's in the house. She's scared again. Well, by the time I got home, there was already neighbors coming over because the judge gave me a civil restraining order. I had to stay 100 yards away from them when they surveyed, but we're supposed to monitor everything they do surveying to survey for damage. It's tough to do that when you got to stay 300 feet away. So I just had to more or less sit there and watch all this happen. On your homestead, they drove through 4 sets of gates to get back, and they drove over new trees that we planted for future things. And go out there, and when they got there, they told the sheriff they would not be on any crops. 10 minutes later, they're in the crops drilling holes. They drilled down 90 feet deep. Yeah, that's the field there. That's the beans they drove on. And so wherever they drilled, yeah, that stuff is dead. Dead. Even the grass they drove on is dead. But this day, this made it real. Real. You know what can happen, but now it's real. So now you're sitting there, and you can't do a damn thing about it. And the sheriff's out there. We had the sheriff there because when this was going to happen, I didn't want them to make anything more up about me like they already did. I was 10 miles away last time, let alone if I'm across the road, what they can try to make up. But it didn't seem like that sheriff was there for me. It seemed like he was 100% there for them. It was just, it was the worst feeling you ever kind of want to have. You got so many emotions. Of course you're mad. People are trespassing on your land. They're trying to take something that's not theirs. We're all taught at a very young age, you don't take something that is not yours. This isn't like hard things to understand and comprehend. But they dug down there, and they said that they wanted to bore under that slough. So they dug there, they went across and dug on the other side, which maybe that makes a little sense, I don't know. But that same slough is a mile to the east, a mile to the west, and just northwest of us. They're crossing it all in places, and they have not drilled any place around there. So is this a target thing again? We can speculate. Yes, probably. Well, anyways, when they dig there, see that barrel? That fills up with a bunch of slurry and stuff that they're coming up. And they asked what to do with it. I said, take it with you. I don't want it spread out there. If the cows are going to graze it, and we don't know what they're digging up. That's how things happen. What happened to all this biosecurity stuff we're supposed to be worried about, but they get to come in and do anything. Well, when they left that site to go to the other one, they went down the road a little ways, and when it come back, that barrel was laying sideways. A couple guys went over. They went right out and just dumped the slop into the township ditch. Sheriff's there. We asked him, well, isn't that littering? He said, oh, it's a township deal. I said, well, good news. I'm on a township. We don't like littering either. Allow it. We're supposed to call you guys to clean this up. You don't put grass clippings in a ditch. You don't put trees in a ditch. We don't dump loads of crap in the ditch. And that's what they did. And he didn't do nothing. They don't get anything ever handed to them. And I've been talking to people. I push the state's attorney every time I go to a county commission meeting and ask them why nothing's being done. They trespassed, broke and entered, false affidavits in court. If any one of us did that, that'd be perjury right now on us. And then littering, and I think illegal trespassing, and just don't know what's what, but we cannot get anybody to stand up and uphold the law anymore. And why that is, I don't know. It's free. You're supposed to be able to call a sheriff. They are the most powerful in the counties, I believe, but they're not standing up and doing their job. Everyone that I've talked to, I said, you put your hand on the Constitution. You're here to uphold the oath, and it's a judge's order. We can't do nothing. Well, I think that's false. I don't know how to prove all that or tell all that stuff, but this is a real thing that can happen. So now this all went on, and this was... They said it was going to be a half hour to an hour. It was about 5.5 to 6 hours that they were out there and did this stuff. And when they were doing this, they had all the roads into my place blocked with pickups. And these people were all sitting with spotting scopes, watching us, watching them. If like Mike or anybody would go up there, they would radio to the security guards and they would come up and meet everybody. We've had armed security guards out in multiple places around in Brown County. Like, it's really getting crazy, and it's real. It has real effects on people. My wife is now scared to be home alone. My kids, they want the door locked at night. You know, I go out in the morning, I about rip that door handle off all the time. I'm 42 years old. I don't know if it's been locked as much ever then as it has in the last week and a half. It's just where we grew up. We're not worried about the neighbors and these things. But now it's a real thing. And it goes to all this stuff. My dad is retired. And now he has to worry about this going across this stuff. That day when this was happening, he's out there, and you can just see the stress and the stuff in his eyes. I mean, I can't hardly imagine that, just to see your boy and your grandkids and where he grew up and this stuff happening. And these are the things that they are going to do. They just blatantly go through everything. And I've done, I don't know, public speaking was never a thing to me. I mean, I talk to cows, some tractors that break down once in a while, even a hay bale. There's usually a little more adjectives in there than that, but we're kind of learning to do this a little bit. Not all smooth, but it's real. It's just I'm not a professional speaker. I'm just giving you guys my story of real, and I want you to take away, we all have to stand up. We have gained so much momentum in the last, every time they pull a BS stunt like this, we got to expose it, we got to get it out there, and we gain momentum. He said, it's been 2 years we've been doing this. In the last 2 months, we really are starting to make a push. We're getting more people involved. Are we getting anything to really happen up top? No, not yet, but maybe. We had a rally in Peoria the other day to call for a special session to get these eminent domain laws switched. You don't get to use eminent domain for a private company, especially a foreign private company that's just using your tax dollars to take your land. I mean, you really start and think of this, you connect all the dots. There's more things to all this stuff, especially, and Michael hit on that more, especially connecting the dots when you get out in the rural areas and where they want to go with this pipe. But I just want everybody to know to stick together, and as divided, they can beat us, but we all stand together, there's not a damn chance. And like I said, we're in this to win. You never stand up to a fight that you think you're going to go lose. No. I mean, we're going to win this thing all the way. Is it going to be easy? Not by any means, and we got our biggest battles ahead. There's no doubt about it. But every day our army is growing, and we are going to stick together. And just like the picture over there with the little rallies, all these little rallies are coming together, and it's going to mean something damn soon to everybody. So thank you.
Jared's story speaks to all of us. It happened to Jared.
Thank you.
So Mike is next.
Yes, I'd just like to add, when I went out to Jared's that afternoon, they, as he said, were surrounded with just Summit pickups all over the place, and when I went to his yard, he gave me his side-by-side to go out and film what was going on at that place. And he was kept, technically, in my opinion, sequestered, or he was under house arrest because that thing was less than 100 yards from his house. But in order to get there, I had to go through the trees, first through his farmyard, then his feed yards, then his trees, baby trees, and then out into his soybean field. And then I watched them drill holes into the ground 90 feet deep and do their thing. But I'm from the northern part of the state, way up by North Dakota, McPherson County, and I want to quickly tell you that I know how the pipe goes there for about 9 miles because we have neighbors and we understand each other and we talk and we do this kind of thing. But in that 9-mile stretch, there are approximately 14 farmhouses, 14 dwellings, and that pipe goes within 500 feet or less of every one of those dwellings. There are 3 farmyards that have more than one dwelling, mine being one of those. In every case, that pipe goes in between the houses of those 3 farmyards. So it appears that there's more going on here than just putting a pipeline in, because if they would move this line just a mile or 2 south, they could miss all of us. There's not that many of us up there anymore. We're probably 1 in 10 farms are left, and if they would do that, they would miss us all. But it appears that they're targeting us, and I can't think of any other reason, but I don't know why. We have reasons, but we're not sure. Thank you, and thank you all for being here, and keep up the fight.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the opportunity for me to follow a congressman from Florida. I didn't anticipate that. And until he tells me a story about castrating an alligator without sedation, I don't really care what he's castrated. Ain't done that yet. I got a feeling that next time I see him, he'll have knife in hand talking about it. Just saying.
Does that alligator identify as a male?
Security? One more outburst from you and you're gone. I can't get it back, Cindy, so it'd be awkward for people watching to see you put it in my little sheath. Why does a knife fit in a sheath? Never thought about that. So I think it's time we laugh because there's some challenges ahead of us. And I had no idea what I was going to say because everything I was going to say has been said, except Jared's part. I wasn't going to say anything Jared said. I did tell Jared a different story because I've heard that one 6 times in the last 3 weeks. But it gets better every time because it comes from here. And that's what Congressman Yoho really is witnessing, is what's coming from here. You know what? I grew up Quincy, Illinois. I saw the error of the ways of my forefathers, who for some stupid reason stopped in Illinois instead of crossing the Mississippi River in 1832 and coming out here, or not here in Iowa either, farther west. You need to be tested in Iowa. You got things too easy, so. 1832, first loose came from Germany to Quincy, Illinois. My family's been taking care of land and livestock every day since. In my lifetime, at the age of 56, I provided daily care for 1 million animals. Pigs, cattle, horses, chickens, and goats. 1 million. And I tell people that, and I think I'm using the number figuratively, and I'm not. Literally provided daily care for 1 million animals in my lifetime. And very fortunately, in October, Halloween 1998, my wife of 30 years, Kelly, and I moved to the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. We left Missouri, and we moved to Rosebud. We took our 300 cows with us, and we worked on a pig project that was a partnership between the Rosebud Sioux tribe and the Bell family from Wahpeton, North Dakota. And it created every opportunity that led me to you and me being here today. Because I was hired to train and teach tribal members how to raise pigs. And within 6 months, my job evolved into, number one, being the white guy that would show up at tribal council meetings every week and be reminded that I was a Wajitsu, which is white man in Sioux. And number two, I would get calls from the New York Times, Minnesota Public Radio, and everybody wanted to come and see this factory farm that was being built on the Rosebud Indian Reservations, exploiting the Indians and their culture. 87% unemployment on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in 1998. And they were proud of that because the Pine Ridge Reservation unemployment was 91%, and as long as they're better than the Pine Ridgers, it's all fine. But then several things happened, and I got really pissed off. And Kelly and I were sitting there one day, and it's kind of like where we're at right now in this room in this meeting. We're sitting there one day, and we said, you know, people don't know where their food comes from. They literally think it comes from the grocery store. And they're going to believe whoever tells them the most where their food's coming from. And if it's not us, we're not going to be happy with the end result. And about that time, 2 Hollywood pricks came to the Rosebud Indian Reservation and started talking about why we no longer needed animals for food production. And I was standing in Millette County, South Dakota, watching 300 people that all make a living from animals soaking it up. and at some level questioning what it is that we do. 1 week later, I walked into a radio studio in Spearfish, South Dakota in front of Jim Thompson. I walked in and said, Mr. Thompson, my name is Trent Luce, 6th generation United States farmer, and I want my own radio show. And he laughed. And I sat down. And he said, oh, you're serious? I said, sir, I'm not leaving until we get a deal. 3 months later, I began producing a program with him. 6 months later, I began producing a radio program called Loose Tales, where I identify the people and the places in rural America that truly make it what it is. And today, Loose Tales can be heard in 21 states on 100 stations with 3.5 million people a day. But along the way, I met several people that were very influential, and there was this guy who said, from Washington, D.C., he was working for the Center for Consumer Freedom. He said, Trent, you need to go to Northfield, Minnesota next week, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be speaking there at St. Olaf College, and I'm talking about the fall of 2000. He's going to be speaking there at St. Olaf College, and I think you need to hear what he's got to say. So I go. I had no idea what I was going to encounter, and I stood in front in a press conference, and I listened to this guy who was being treated like royalty, and all of a sudden I heard him saying, people who are living and working on hog farms today are losing humanity. And all the climate change is a result of people living and working on hog farms and our livestock factories and all of these challenges. And it was the first time I'd really faced this up close and personal. And I'm like, what do I do now? I can't make a scene, but I got to let him know that he's stupid and get him straightened out. And all these people circle around him, because he's Kennedy. Then he screwed up. He went in the bathroom. So he's standing there, and I pull up next to him, and we're both doing our things. And I said, hi, my name's Trent Luce, 6th generation United States farmer. I was actually working on that Rosebud reservation that you were talking about, and I've been involved in agriculture my entire life. And I suggest if you're going to continue to talk about my industry, you get your facts straight, because I'm going to be there to hold you accountable. He zipped quickly. And for those of you who are going to ask afterwards, neither one of us washed our hands. We go out, and I'm going to shorten this up quite a bit. For the next 8 weeks, when he spoke, I was front row center. And the next week was a meeting in Clear Lake, Iowa. And that meeting, I clearly remember the day. April 3rd, 2001. Nope, I remembered the day wrong. April 3rd, 2002 was the day he was going to have the Hog Summit in Clear Lake, Iowa. Was anybody there? You know why I remember it so clearly? Because it was my anniversary. So while Mark Thompson can talk about what he has to do on his anniversary, I left my wife and went to a hog summit where Robert Kennedy Jr. is talking about he's going to tear down American agriculture at this summit. But what did we do the day before on a Friday in Des Moines, Iowa? We held a Faces of Ag rally. I helped organize with several entities and myself, Heidi Vitito from Washington County, and Patty Judge, who at the time was the Commissioner of Agriculture for Iowa. We addressed a crowd at the state capitol of 1,000 people. It was just as inspiring as you could ever imagine, because we're going to put the human element back into food production. And here's what I learned along the way. There have been a lot of challenges in what was going on in Iowa agriculture at that time. And who just left as governor of Iowa in 1999 in a surprise decision not to rerun? Terry Branstad. And the new governor, who was a Philadelphia lawyer, who had moved to Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and became the mayor, in 1988, he and his wife dedicated most of the year to campaigning for a guy running for president. Does anybody know what his name was? Joe Biden. So we have a meeting at the state capitol with 1,000 people all excited about putting the human element back into agriculture. And I'll never forget a longtime dear friend, the late Kay Christian from Ames, came up to me and she said, Trent, this was so cool. My dad would turn over in his grave if he thought we had to come and protest to keep farming. And that's what it was about. And then the next day, there was one other little component of that. It took some money to feed all of those people that we fed at that rally at the state capitol in Des Moines on that Friday. Anybody want to guess? Because this crowd seems to be pretty intuitive on who's doing what. Anybody want to guess who funded our side of the equation? One particular pork producer, a guy named Bruce Rastetter, who owned Heartland Pork. And Heartland Pork was the target of all of these challenges. Heartland Pork grew as the Iowa's largest pork producer under the tutelage of who was the governor? Terry Branstad. Heartland Pork quit shortly after we had that summit. And then a guy named Bruce Rastetter created Summit at that time, and Summit got into what business? Ethanol, which was all about taking the subsidies from the federal government. So now, in 2001, 2002, I'm in Iowa in front of 1,000 people talking about the challenges from a guy named Terry Branstad, Bruce Rastetter, and Tom Vilsack. What has changed? What has changed? Here's what's changed. Now Terry Branstad's got a son that's working with Summit, and Tom Vilsack has got a son who's working for Summit. I'll be damned. I'll be damned. How did Tom Vilsack get from Philadelphia to Mount Pleasant, Iowa? I mean, since the covered wagon days, I don't think a lot of people made that trek. And yet in 1988, he's campaigning for Joe Biden, who puts in place the Inflation Reduction Act, who gets more money to Bruce Rastetter through the USDA, and a guy named Tom Vilsack. What about this surprises us? Here's what surprises me. We sit here and we talk about how the answer is getting more involved in politics. And that's what I've done. I campaigned in last year with Teresa Thibodeau, who should have been the governor of Nebraska. I was running with her as her lieutenant governor, and I spent last spring in the primary season campaigning day in and day out all across all 93 counties of Nebraska, and I learned that politics were more disgusting than I even thought they were. But I also learned that the opportunity comes from doing what we're doing right here, and getting into every one of these counties and bringing awareness to folks that what you're dealing with in Clearwater, Florida is no different than what we're dealing with in Boone County, Iowa. There's one thing, Jeff Magrum, that hit me today that I hadn't thought about, and I'm going to ask you a question because I don't know the answer. Oh, you're going to have to deal with this, Matthew. I know you're in the U.S. Congress, but in the state Florida House in Tallahassee, who do the conservatives have power in, the House or the Senate? Yes, not the Republicans, the conservatives. Either one?
I would say the House.
Really? Carla, in South Dakota, who has the conservative power, the House or the Senate?
Neither.
Okay, we're going to go with the House as better than the Senate. Who kills every conservative project in South Dakota? Jeff Magrum. Who kills every conservative project in North Dakota? Mark. Cindy. Who kills every conservative project in Iowa?
The Senate.
Who kills every conservative project in the United States Congress?
The Senate.
Senators.
I'm just an old cowboy from Nebraska. But when I see rustlers lining up that all wear the same sign on the shirt that says Senate, I start asking questions. And the question hasn't been brought up yet today, because we're all assuming that come November, we can go to the ballot box and who we vote for is going to get in. And what I'm seeing is that we have a ballot system that is being controlled to make sure that we give the people just enough of what they want in the House, and that we make sure the people who are in the Senate don't let anything happen. And I go to meetings all the time, and I sit in county meetings where I see division within our conservative groups who aren't even conservative, Jared. We have the Republican Party now split into 3 factions in every single state. Oh, by the way, I forgot one other state, Colorado, who I work with closely. Colorado Senate kills everything. They actually find like 3 or 4 conservative folks in the House, which is a big deal in Colorado. But if you're not catching my drift, I'm point blank saying that we live in a representative republic, that if our voice when we go to the ballot box is not being heard, we're never going to fix any of these problems. Because we could have a meeting and talk about what's happening to our kids that would be just as compelling right now, and at every turn, who throws a red, like, by the way, I just have to tell you that Nebraska does not have the same problem that you have in North Dakota, Jeff, only because we have a unicameral, we don't have a Senate and a House. But every state that I'm aware of, it's a Senate that's killing it, which tells me the algorithms are telling us who can be representing us in our districts. And to me, we don't fix any of this nonsense until we fix that. And we don't even want to talk about that, because we know how to show up and read the Constitution. Thank you, James, Judge. Yeah, I always carry a Constitution with me, but I always give them away to people who I think need to read it. So I was without a Constitution until James Judge gave me his. We always talk about, we just got to follow this. But the Founding Fathers pretty clearly said, nobody's going to follow it for you. You got to be the dutiful citizen to make it happen. And that's what we're about. We're dutiful citizens about making it happen. And so, I mean, I really wanted to talk about CO2 pipeline because I've been working on it for 2 years. And 2 years ago, I told people that I'm personally going to make sure that we stop this after I went to a Northwest landowners meeting in Bismarck. And I had people look me in the eye and say, you're not going to stop this. There's too many people with too much money. I said, you don't understand the power of the people when we stand up and be heard. And today, those same people tell me, you know what, you're like 50% chance you're going to stop this. I said, well, when you get to 100, let's get back and talk. Because we're out there working, making it happen. But here's the thing. We all want to blame coal. You can go to the Department of Energy website, and they will tell you that coal across the board in the past 15 years has reduced nitrous oxide emissions by 78%. Have reduced sulfur oxide emissions by 92%. And have, excuse me, I confused two numbers. Nitrous oxide emissions by 78% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrous oxide. So coal itself has reduced nitrous oxide emissions by 88%, by sulfur emissions by 92%, and by CO2 by 27%. So it's not about burning dirty coal. It's about something that somebody said that you, I see, had a pretty interesting little dialogue with after, did you really call her a walking bitch? AOC actually said it one day accidentally. She said, this isn't about a new green energy. This is about restructuring society. That's what we're faced with. And that's what we have to fight and fix. Last week, how many of you heard about the rail car that went off the track over the Yellowstone River? I went there. I wanted to find out what's really going on. I went to Columbus, Montana. Anybody want to guess what year the bridge was made that collapsed, that the train fell in, 17 cars fell in the Yellowstone River? 1917. My grandpa was born in 1918. He died at the age of 88, lived a great life. What about that bridge? Holy shit, bridge was built in 1917. We're still running trains across it with toxic materials. So what went in the Yellowstone River? Molten sulfur, and liquid petroleum liquid petroleum ash. Thank you, Matthew. Liquid petroleum asphalt. That's exactly right. That's what went in the Yellowstone River. So I go last Wednesday night. I go to Columbus, Montana. I'm sitting through this public hearing, and the local folks did a great job walking through why we didn't have to be concerned, how everything was nice, it's going to be okay. And what they did from the first responders, we got to say thank you. Let's just give a round of applause to all the first responders in the United States who are volunteers to show up. And then somebody asked this young lady from the EPA who really pissed me off because she was like, I'm here to help you and work. I mean, she read the book, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. Like I wanted up there and kick her ass. And somebody asked her about the sulfur. The sulfur's in the water. And she tried to answer, and then she said, oh, well, we have an EPA biochemist up there. Paul, would you tell him about the sulfur, molten sulfur in the water? He stood up and he said, really, these are globular sulfur components, and they're not going to dissolve. And even if they did, you as a human being would not be able to ingest enough sulfur to cause a problem and be toxic to you as a human. Okay, that kind of makes sense to me. So then when the meeting got over, I buzzed right over to the biochemist. I wanted to know, hey, Paul, you really think that there's no danger that sulfur in the water is going to cause any human impact? No, he gave me all the same line, you know. And I said, well, then why did the EPA ban sulfur from diesel fuel? Oh, that's a great question. He said, because you see, you take the sulfur, and it's as an element, it's fine, but then as a gas, it gets up in the atmosphere, and you get acid rain through the sulfur, and then it comes down, and it causes a potential problem. I said, Paul, I'm just a cowboy from Nebraska, but what you just said is you take sulfur in the water, which isn't a problem, and you mix it with 2 parts oxygen, which is what sulfur dioxide is, 1 part sulfur, 2 parts oxygen, and then you put a little H2O back through it, which you just told me wasn't dangerous in the river, and it comes back to Earth through the sulfur and brings it back to the Earth, and it's dangerous. You know what he told me? I'm from out east, and you Westerners just don't think like we do. I said, Paul, here's what I know. The EPA eliminated sulfur from diesel engines to make them cleaner burning, and now for the first time in the history of American agriculture, we have farmers who need to add sulfur to the fertilizer mix because we don't have enough in the earth. This is just basic common sense. And one day, I told this story, I told it every time. I thought it was funny, and it's no longer funny, because it's kind of what drives me every time I go somewhere. I drink a lot of coffee, just kind of wired that way, but I hate those lids. You know, you go in a gas station, you get that little lid, that little flippy thing, you tip that cup of coffee up, that little flippy thing sticks to your nose, you spill coffee in your pants. Well, where did I get the lid? So I go through La Crosse, Wisconsin. I cross the Mississippi River, I go in a gas station, I set my lidless cup of coffee down in front of the young lady behind the counter, much younger than Cindy, she was at least 50. She looks at it. I'm glad you caught that part. That was the most important part of the sentence. She looks at my lidless cup of coffee and she says, is that coffee? No, it's water. Oh, you smart ass. Our water looks like that here in La Crosse some days. And then for no reason whatsoever, the guy right behind me in line, he pipes up and he says, yeah, it's because the fish have sex in the water. I said, is there water the fish don't have sex in? Once again, the young lady behind the counter says, you guys quit pulling my leg. Fish don't have sex. Ma'am, how is it that we get more fish? Oh, I never thought about that. Fish are having sex in the water, making more fish on a daily basis. She never thought about it. And I thought, this is funny, but this is really the story. We're sitting here today complaining and getting a fire in our belly because people don't understand science. And more importantly, they don't understand science. Now we're being lied to about science. Just think about nitrous oxide. Here's the biggest lie we've had in my lifetime. Nitrous oxide, 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. And nitrates are important for what? Heart health and growing crops. 2 things, heart health and growing crops. We have methane in the atmosphere. That's that greenhouse gas that Carol was talking about. The cows are burping and causing problems. What's methane good for? It's 90% of our natural gas, which we use to make energy or synthetic plant food. 90% is methane. Apparently 2 of the greenhouse gases are responsible for plant growth. What about the 3rd one? Carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere at 430 parts per million. If it was at 600 parts per million, we'd have more plants. But we don't. Instead, what carbon dioxide does is it fuels photosynthesis. It allows the plant, encourages the plant to grow faster with less water and produces oxygen. So the 3 greenhouse gases that we've been told we need to mitigate, and we're out on campaigns saying that we reduce our carbon footprint. Well, you're killing people. Because those 3 greenhouse gases are responsible for plant growth. The more plants you have, the more humans you have, the more animals you have, and the healthier the planet. That's the big lie that we have to talk about. I am concerned about the dangers of 2,600 miles of a pipeline that are compressed at 2,300 pounds per square inch. But I'm most concerned about the lie that we're being told about greenhouse gases, which improve planet health every day, and we're being told we got to tie them up. And we can only do all of these things because we have had men and women for 247 years dating back to that first time, which I truly believe we were in the same perils that we were in 1777. And George Washington put this Continental Army together and said, we're going to take on the king and the crown because we have taxation without representation. And if they thought that was taxation with representation, what the hell would they call this? But what has happened is that for 247 years, men and women have picked their hand up and said, pick me, I want to risk my life to protect the freedom, and give those folks in 2023, and the kids that aren't even born yet that Jeff's talking about, the opportunity for freedom and liberty in a small section of the world, like Congressman Yoho was talking about in terms of the numbers of people who have the liberty that we have, and now it falls upon us to do what our forefathers did. But we can only do that because of the veterans, the first responders, and the active duty kids who are still there saying, I want to preserve freedom for the future of the United States citizen, and the American experience can't continue. God bless the veterans and the farmers who feed us.